Hello everyone, and welcome to the Cioffi Brothers podcast. I'm Ken.
I'm Alex.
And today we're going to be reviewing Yooka-Laylee. Now, Yooka-Laylee is a 3D platformer reminiscent of the 3D platformers of old. It's about Yooka, a lizard, and his friend Laylee, a fruit bat, who are fighting to recover pages, which are magical book pages, from Capital B and Dr. Quack. Now, this was actually like a fan-funded indie game.
A crowd-funded game,
yes,
is what they're referring to. What you're referring to, which
yeah.
means the fans essentially donated the money to the team for the team to
build the game they want.
Game.
Yeah, and the team is made up of a bunch of former Rare employees who were famous for banjo-kazooie. I think some of the Donkey Kong Country games.
Donkey Kong Country, Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, just the nostalgic
kind of a particular golden era of
3D on the N64, mainly on the N64, until they were bought off by Microsoft.
Yep. So, without further ado, let's get started on the pros rather. Our first pro is nostalgic gameplay. This definitely plays like a classic 3D platformer. I think that's something that it's a type of game that we don't see a lot of these days. No. You see a lot of first-person shooters. You see a lot of RPG type games, but you don't see a lot of the 3D platformers the way that you did. Kind of around the N64, PlayStation 1 era.
Yeah, that was really the golden era of platformers with Spyro, Crash, Banjo-Kazooie, the first 3D Mario coming out.
Yep.
All of these, that was the generation, and then we moved into the PS2, PS3, where that kind of gameplay got left behind, and it stinks for people like us. That's what we liked about this. There was that feeling. Yeah. Of playing those 3D platforms.
And I think that's really where the drive of the impetus for this game really came from, was the fact that there was a desire for this type of game, and I think that's why the crowdsourcing really was so successful, is because there was a real desire for a game like this.
Yeah, one of the most successful crowd-funded games of all time.
Awesome. Okay.
Next pro. The worlds are pretty good, are beautiful.
Yeah.
For something like this. Once again, we haven't seen a game like this since the N64 4x3 composite video out.
Mm-hmm.
Just that, definition. Now we're in the HD era where these worlds can be beautiful.
Yeah, we can really see them be brought to life in a way that we hadn't before. They have a lot of the classic kind of tropes. They have like the opening world is just kind of like reminiscent of Bomb on Battlefield, in the sense that it's just like a grassy area that you can kind of play around with. They have a classic ice world type thing. They have a casino world that is really neat. And just in general, just all the worlds are very nicely done. In the in-between spaces, the hub world is very
nicely put together.
Well, yeah.
And the
swamp world, that's the other one. There was like a swamp world. Sorry, I was spacing out on that.
That's fine. Yeah, like I said, just everything together, everything just looks nice. The HD, being in HD, just seeing this in such a new light, it just was really nice.
Yeah. Another pro is the abilities. A neat usage of abilities. So the Yooka-Laylee character is a unique character in the fact that it has the tongue. We have a lot of the classic tropes. In terms of the character skill sets. They have the backflip, the ground pound. The kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a charge or something like that. Yeah. So there are a lot of those classic moves that are represented there, which is awesome. But then additionally, you have kind of a unique thing in the glide. I'm sorry, there's also glide there in the form of Laylee. You hold on to her and you can kind of glide to different eras, and a lot of different games do some variation of that kind of power. But what's unique about Yooka and his tongue I believe it's a him. I think the bat is a girl.
I believe so.
And there are different objects within the world, and when he hits it with his tongue, he can take on the properties of those objects. So there's a cannonball, which makes him kind of, weighty, heavier, and lets him, go through mists that are blowing at him. There's one fire plant that he can take, and that'll let him, blow fire and everything. And there's a frost berry, which lets him, blow cold air on things. So it's a really neat concept in terms of, here's this character, and let's figure out a fun and inventive way that goes with the character to have them use their abilities.
Yeah. Next pro is character design. The characters are designed very well. It's
very memorable characters.
Very Saturday morning cartoonish look that we got growing up with the anthropomorphic animals.
Close enough. I was going to let it slide.
All right. We have all those type of characters, and even like you have a talking vending machine. You got these kind of fun. They're just kind of fun characters. They're not taking themselves too seriously.
Yep.
They're just a fun. Yep. Colorful bunch of people.
Yep. Yeah. You have Vendy the vending machine. You have Yooka and Laylee. You have Capital B, who's one of the bad guys. Dr. Quack, who's one of the bad guys. Rextro, which is a retro Tyrannosaurus Rex, so that's where you get the portmanteau of Rextro, so it's very very interesting kind of a group of characters, and it's kind of nice.
Trousers, where he's a snake.
Trouser the snake, yes, he's a
trouser snake.
He's a trouser snake.
It's a kind of cool tongue-in-cheek little.
Yeah, it is. It's tongue-in-cheek. It's one of those things that as a kid looking at it, and that's I think some of the greatest stories and properties and stuff like that are the things that kids enjoy at the time, but there's something in it that parents get a kick out of as well. And I think that's one of those things that kind of lends itself here.
Yep, definitely.
So the next pro we'll get into is just what we were talking about earlier, the fact that this was a fan-supported game, like an indie game, the fact that it's people coming together and say, yes, this is what we want. We don't just want another first-person shooter. We don't want Call of Duty 115. We don't want, well, not that we don't want them, but we want this as well. This deserves representation in terms of the types of games that we're playing.
Variety is the spice of life.
Variety is the spice of life. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just cool to see that the community spoke.
Yeah, and people spoke.
Listened.
People spoke with their wallets, and that's what's nice here. And hopefully, this is the type of thing where people will see that there is a market for this, and potentially, maybe we'll see a little bit more of a throwback to games like this in the future.
I hope so. We could get into a whole bunch of stuff. There's been crowdfunding games that haven't been successful, but I'm glad to see that something like this was very successful.
Well, and you could even though I'm sure it was in development, before this came out, but even with the advent of now, where we are now in time, Super Mario Odyssey is kind of also a hearkening back to the 3D platformer style, when for a long time they were really focusing on the side-scrolling or the
classic time-based
more classic time-based challenges, exactly, and to see it come back to that is a welcome change.
Definitely.
So,
and then just a fun little thing. There's couch co-op.
Yeah.
Which is something you do not see in like any games nowadays,
something you don't see as much nowadays. Yeah.
We're going back to the days of the N64 where we had 4 people sitting in a crowded room.
You had 4 controller slots. Yeah.
A 19-inch TV, and you're all trying to play some GoldenEye or some banjo-kazooie
without screen looking.
It's impossible.
Kids these days, they don't even know what screen looking is.
Yeah. Cheers. But you don't see that nowadays, and it's not. It's just fun to see that, and we'll talk about it a little bit more on our cons.
Yeah.
But,
what's fun is that
fun that they decided that this was necessary, and they they needed to put this in.
Yeah, I think it's important as well. I think it's a shame that, you know, when you know, we hang out together, that there's not more of an opportunity for us to sit in the same room and play the same game together. I mean, you get that a little bit with the Lego games, you know, sometimes. You know, I think that's the one that we've done the most, but you don't see it as much. And we were actually playing it a little bit. So throughout the game, you unlock different arcade cabinets for Rextro's Arcade, and those were a couple of the games that, you know, they're actually, you know, 2 to 4 player, and you can go through. And, you know, we were having quite a bit of fun going through and playing them.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun to be had. I could see getting together with 4 people and kind of, you know, they were short Mario Party-esque games.
I was going to say, yeah, if you're just like,
you know,
a group together, and or even if you only had like a handful, if you had a big group of people and you had like, you know, between 2 and 4 controllers, and you know, people swapping out when they lost and stuff like that, I could see it being a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was neat. It was a neat thing for them to include.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so we're at the part of the show where we talk about the cons of the different things that we review. And I think, you know, the first one that we would like to talk about is that, you know, we do very much love the nostalgia that's baked into this, but we actually have to have two cons here that go together. The first one is that it kind of relies a little bit too heavily on nostalgia.
Yeah, for better or for worse, it's really taken a lot from the original 3D platformers.
So it you know, my point was that, you know, it was too similar to Banjo-Kazooie. Now, obviously, in the selling of this game on the Kickstarter, they were talking about it as a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. And that I was very excited for, because I did enjoy the Banjo-Kazooie games, so, you know, something like that, I was like, oh, that would be great. But this is really Banjo-Kazooie 3 with a different coat of paint on it. They do the exact same type of talking style. You know, the fact that you know, Laylee is really just a placeholder for Kazooie, and Yooka just a placeholder for Banjo. I
mean, even coming down to their attitude and mannerisms.
Oh, absolutely.
Banjo-Kazooie.
They mirror it
so
very much. Yeah.
It's almost hard for this game to have its own
its own voice, to stand on its own.
As more than just a Banjo-Kazooie 3, as Yooka-Laylee, as a franchise of its own. And
I think that's what I was kind of disappointed about, in the fact that when they were talking about this and having this be a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, I guess, and I suppose it depends on anyone's particular interpretation of that terminology, but I would have thought that there would have been, you know, certain things that were taken from Banjo-Kazooie, but I expected there to be a lot more innovation and moving in their own direction with this game that still had a similar feel to the Banjo-Kazooie and throwing back to the platformers of old, and capturing some of that nostalgia without necessarily trying to be a beat-for-beat remake of a certain type of character set.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't see it as its own game. I felt like it was just the next Banjo-Kazooie that we would have gotten back in, you know, late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. So the next con kind of goes along with that, in the sense that there's only 4 worlds. So you have, you know, a main hub world, and there's different challenges within the main hub world that you can do to try to find different pages and stuff like that. But the main worlds themselves, there's really only 4 active worlds that you can jump into. Now, one of the things actually I meant to put as a con, so we'll do a little subtitle here or a pro. We'll do a little subtitle here for a pro, is the fact that the worlds can be expanded upon, which is really cool. So once you collect enough pages, you can spend them to expand the world. So, you know, you start out with a book that you jump into, and then when you use the pages to expand it, it's a little bit bigger book. And then when you go into the world, if you've already been there before, you'll find that there's new sections and new areas that have been opened up. Things have grown and changed a little bit compared with the last time that you've been there. And that's a really cool concept.
it's a cool idea to...
It gives replayability to certain levels, and it gives you things to kind of look forward to and look out for in some of the levels.
Yeah, it has you coming back once you get enough pages to unlock this next part. You know, keeps the world expanding, evolving, everything. You know, and it puts some credence behind you going out and doing this task of finding the pages and making these worlds bigger. And
it also keeps you moving. So, you know, you might be stuck on a certain page, and it might just think to yourself, well, maybe that's just one I can't get right now. You know, that's just I just can't do that right this moment. So that's cool. But back to our con is the fact that there are only 4 worlds. So the thing that's kind of, I mean, this does feel like a complete game. So I don't want it to seem like you're shortchanged at all. But what I was kind of disappointed about is the fact that, you know, you look at games like Spyro, you look at Mario 64, you look at you know, banjo-kazooie and games of that era. You know, you had a lot of different worlds, and you know, it seemed odd to harken back to such a nostalgic era there, and then you know, not have that same kind of variety in the different worlds. You know, there are only 4 worlds. I think, you know, there's the you know, the grassy area, the snow place, the swamp place, and the casino place. And that's too bad that that's all there is, because all those places are done very well. You tend to want to see more.
Yeah. Definitely. So this goes back,
and this could be a time sensitive depending on when you're watching the podcast. As of right now, it's February of 2018. The game was released in April of 2017. And we're still missing some things in the game. One of the things that was promised...
Some things that were promised within the Kickstarter campaign that we expected at this point to be delivered, which sounds awful when it does sound whiny. Sounds like that. It does sound whiny, but at the same time we were promised this. People paid extra money for these features
things to be included,
and they're not included yet. And that's kind of a bummer.
And it's not just that they're not included yet. I think there's not really a clear line of sight as to when those things are going to happen.
There's no indication as to when these are going to be made available to us, and even to the Kickstarter people.
And the biggest one, and the one that I want to see the most, is the 64-bit mode.
Yeah.
Which is just, like, especially when you have a game like this that's really churning on that nostalgia. One of the things that was promised was the ability to click the game over into what's called 64-bit mode. And it would essentially change all the worlds and all the characters into this, you know, low-poly 64-bit versions of themselves, which just is such a cool idea. I mean, can you imagine on Super Nintendo going into, I mean, and that's essentially what you get in Mario Maker, but can you imagine in Super Nintendo going into Super Mario World and being able to switch over to an 8-bit mode and see, like, 8-bit Mario and Luigi? We have a guest.
We have a guest. He's been here for a little while.
This, for everyone, this is Chewie. He's short for Chewbacca. He's our puppy, and he decided to join us today. And we were hoping that he was going to stay chill until we got done with this podcast, but he decided to poke his little head up.
Yeah, he does that.
So, anyway, can you imagine in Super Mario World being able to switch over to an 8-bit mode? Yeah. Like, it's just something that's so completely unheard of, but it's just a really cool idea. And as much as I'm complaining now, when they do finally release it, I will be very excited to play with it.
Yeah, definitely. Rextro, can't even say it. As cool a character, it's kind of a little thing. As cool as a character he could have been cooler.
Well, he ended up being just basically like a manager of the arcade, and I really thought there was going to be a lot more to the character, given how much they kind of played him up in some of the promotional material and the advertising and the Kickstarters and stuff like that. I really thought he was going to be more closely connected to the 64-bit mode. I thought it was going to be. I thought he was going to be more of a main character within the story, as opposed to just kind of an ancillary character who just kind of manages the arcade stuff.
Yeah.
So. And maybe that's just again a personal perception and personal preference, as opposed to an actual con. The last one, though, is a real con. So why don't you take the lead on this one?
So we were talking about couch co-op being a pro before, which it still is, still a pro. At the same time, though, it's also a con because
there's
really,
no real couch co-op.
So
you can play.
Okay, so there's the arcade, which is cool.
Yeah,
that's cool, but they had promised a 2-player co-op in the
main game.
adventure.
Yeah,
and what it turns out to be is dumb. I'm sorry for lack of a better word. It's not.
It's essentially equivalent. It's equivalent to the quote-unquote co-op version in Super Mario Galaxy, where you have the main person playing as the character, and a second person pops in with a Wiimote, and basically all they have is a star on the screen that can shoot things or pick up star bits. And that's really all we have here, is essentially is a cursor on the screen that the second player controls, and it's a bunch of little bee characters, and they can help you collect certain things, they can help activate certain switches, but is essentially a useless feature.
I mean, we played for 15 minutes in this
trying to figure out
what we could do. We had to look it up online to figure out what could be done, and even with that help, we couldn't even find anything to do.
We couldn't even find anything to do, really, yeah. So it was a shame.
It's too bad. It feels really tacked on and not... It should definitely not be a main selling point for this game.
No.
And it almost seems like, why bother putting it in?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, it's a shame. I would have hoped to have seen real co-op, like a palette swapped version of the character that lets you pop in, and then maybe as a result, the enemies double within the world or something like that. I mean, I mean, other than the processing power that you'd have to figure out for, for the game, I think there are ways that it could have been done better. If you did if you had an additional palette swapped version of the character, I mean, similar to Cuphead, where when you play 2-player, you get a much significantly harder version of any particular level when you have 2 people in there versus when you just have 1 person in there. Something like that could have been done here, where you have a harder version of each level with the 2 people.
Yep.
Or even that, even beyond that, if you wanted to boil it down to the most basic, an additional iteration of the character, color swapped, and then just double the little minion enemies in the level. That would have been plenty. Yeah. But of course, that's us, Monday morning quarterbacking. So there's a little bit of that. So let's talk about our grades. Alex, what would you give Yooka-Laylee?
I'd give it a C+.
Okay.
It was fun. It was enjoyable, but it was missing something. It's just missing that extra bit to make it its own.
Yeah. Yeah. I similarly, very close, I gave it a B-. I did enjoy it. I continue to play it. I mean, there's still different things that I haven't done yet on it, and different parts of the world that I haven't gotten to, or pages I haven't collected yet. So I continue to play it, and I will continue to play it. I do agree it lacks a certain amount of charm, but I still think it was a very good, very enjoyable game. I would still recommend it, and I would have bought it. Like, I would buy it again. Like I would do it over.
Yeah.
So
I think that makes sense.
Okay, great. Well, I think that's all we have for today. And as always, we would ask you to share, comment, like,
hit that subscribe button,
all that good stuff, and we'll see you guys next time.